I was kicked out of my house on Christmas Eve by my own mother. She threw my suitcase down the porch steps like it was garbage day. Merry freaking Christmas. It was snowing so hard I couldn't even see the streetlights. I remember thinking, weirdly, that my socks were going to be soaked before I could even figure out what the hell just happened. The kicker? My brother, Jake, was inside opening the keys to his brand new car. A car bought with the money I'd spent years helping to save. Not that they ever thanked me, I was just the good one. The responsible daughter who paid bills when dad's hours got cut, who babysat Jake while mom worked late red, had wine nights with her friends, who somehow owed it to the family to show up and never, ever complain. Jake was the prince, the golden child, the son to their universe. Me? I was the insurance policy, the backup plan, the dishwasher. It wasn't always this obvious. When I was a kid, I thought that's just how families worked. You gave, you tried harder, you kept your mouth shut because you're older, you should know better. You smiled while Jake got the new Nintendo, and I got a pair of socks from the clearance bin. You clapped when he got a Most Improved award for showing up to half his classes, while your straight A report card got lost somewhere under a pile of junk mail. But that night, Christmas Eve, me standing in the freezing cold with my suitcase bursting open, I realized it wasn't just favoritism. It was hate wrapped in a bow. Here's the part that still makes my stomach twist. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I had begged for Christmas off. The car dealership I worked at was slammed in December with all the end-of-year sales. I'd been working 10-hour days, missing parties, missing sleep, because family comes first. That's what Mom said. So I traded shifts, groveled to my manager, practically cried just to get Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off. And when I showed up, they didn't even save me a plate. Jake was sitting at the head of the table, grinning ear to ear, while Mom and Dad beamed at him like he'd just cured cancer. The car keys were already on the table, wrapped in a big red bow. And me? I barely got a hello, just a weird glance from Mom, the kind that makes you flinch even though you're not sure why yet. She waited until Jake had finished his third helping of ham and mashed potatoes, until he had posted 5 Instagram stories of his new ride, until she was sure everyone was watching. Then she stood up, crossed her arms and said, "I think it's time you found somewhere else to be." Just like that. No fight, no explanation, no, "Hey, can we talk?" or, things have been tense. Just a verbal eviction notice in front of everyone, including my Aunt Lisa, who quickly found a sudden fascination with her wine glass. When I didn't move, Mom rolled her eyes. "We need the room. Jake's girlfriend is moving in." The world spun. I had paid half the mortgage 3 summers ago when Dad lost his job. I paid the electricity bill last week. But Jake's new girlfriend needed the space, so I had to go. I didn't cry. Not there. I packed what I could in a suitcase that barely zipped and stood on the porch like a lost dog until my Uber showed up. The driver was this sweet old man named Jerry, and when he saw me standing there with wet socks and a torn jacket, he turned up the heater without saying a word. "Family, huh?" he said quietly as he pulled away from the curb. I didn't answer. I just stared out the window and promised myself something. Something cold. Something bitter. This was the last Christmas I'd ever spend begging for scraps at a table that never had a seat for me. When people talk about family drama, they usually mean screaming matches, throwing plates, airing dirty laundry. I didn't give them that. I gave them silence, and it terrified them. After that Christmas Eve, I stopped answering their calls, stopped showing up to family dinners, stopped sending birthday cards signed, "Love you always." I didn't even post passive-aggressive Facebook statuses like Mom loved to do. I just disappeared, ghosted them, the same way they had ghosted every sacrifice I ever made. At first, they acted like it didn't bother them. Mom posted a dozen photos of Jake and his new girlfriend making the house a home, surrounded by fairy lights and thrift store furniture I'd helped pay for. Dad posted blurry shots of Jake's new car with captions like, "Our boy is growing up." Not a single mention of me. But silence is a funny thing. It echoes. And pretty soon, I guess it started to get a little too loud for them to ignore. The first guilt trip came about a month later. A random Wednesday night, I got a 3-paragraph text from Mom. "We're family. You're being selfish. Jake's girlfriend is family now too. You can't just abandon us over one misunderstanding." I didn't reply. Next came Dad. 2 days after that, "You know your mother's health isn't good." The The stress you're causing could make it worse. And when I still didn't respond, Jake stepped in. Look, not to be rude, but you're kind of making it all about you. Grow up. Coming from the guy who once cried because Burger King forgot his fries, the irony could have flattened a house. I blocked their numbers. Not in a rage, not dramatically. Just clicked the button and felt the tension leak out of my chest like a slow, steady sigh. But cutting off communication wasn't enough. They started showing up. I moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a nail salon across town. It wasn't much yellowing carpet, weird smells, a radiator that made a noise like an old man clearing his throat, but it was mine, my own space. No silent judgment radiating from the walls. Until Mom showed up uninvited. I came home one night after a double shift at the dealership to find her sitting on the stairs. No hello, no apology. Just, I need your help with rent this month. I think that was the moment the last little frayed thread between us snapped. Because there she was, after throwing me out into a snowstorm, after treating me like a discarded coat, acting like nothing had happened. Like I owed her something. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stepped over her, unlocked my door, and shut it in her face. The next morning, there was a post on Facebook. Some people forget who was there for them when they had nothing. Family First #disappointed, followed by a suspicious number of sad face reacts from distant relatives I hadn't heard from since middle school. I could have defended myself. Pop posted screenshots. Explained. I didn't. Let them think what they wanted. I wasn't playing the villain they wanted me to be. I wasn't playing at all. Meanwhile, life went on. I threw myself into work. Started taking night classes in business management. Began socking away every spare dime into savings. Jake, on the other hand, he flamed out faster than a wet match. Turns out, posting Instagram thirst traps of your new car doesn't magically pay insurance, gas, and maintenance bills. And working 2 shifts a week at a vape shop wasn't exactly funding his entrepreneur lifestyle. By summer, he was borrowing Mom's car again. By fall, he was borrowing Mom's money. And by Christmas one year, exactly after the night, they booted me out like garbage. He was sending me DMs. Hey sis, can you help me get a job at your dealership? Things have been rough. I stared at the message for a long time, not because I was debating what to say, but because I genuinely couldn't believe he still thought I owed him anything. The dealership I worked at wasn't just any dealership anymore. While Jake had been busy burning through money and Instagram clout, I had been quietly climbing the ranks. I started as a lot attendant, then moved to customer service, then sales, then floor manager. Now, the GM was hinting about retirement and whispering to me about taking his place. I hadn't just survived. I had built something. Something they could never touch. Something they would never understand. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about roots. Planting them deep, steady, somewhere nobody could yank them out from under me again. Still, when I saw Jake's message blinking at me, a tiny ember sparked to life in my chest. Not rage, not bitterness. Something colder, sharper, patience. Patience that one day soon I wouldn't have to fantasize about justice. I could make it happen. They thought I had been sitting in silence because I was broken. They didn't realize silence can be a weapon too. Sharper than words. Sharper than any scream. And baby, I had spent a year sharpening mine to a razor's edge. It's funny how life gives you exactly what you need at the weirdest times. I wasn't thinking about revenge the night I got the email. I was thinking about how many dishes I still had to wash before I could collapse into bed. I was halfway through scrubbing marinara sauce off a pan when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was another dealership memo or a dumb Black Friday ad, but it wasn't. It was from Aunt Lisa, the same Aunt Lisa who had stared into her wine glass while Mom threw me out. The same Aunt Lisa who had, until now, said exactly nothing. Subject line, you should know. No greeting, no explanation. Just 2 PDF attachments. I opened the first one and my stomach dropped through the floor. It was a copy of a bank withdrawal, a joint account I hadn't seen in years. One that Mom had convinced me to open when I started my first real job at 18. Just for emergencies, she had said. You know, to help each other. Yeah. Turns out the emergency was fund Jake's car payments and rent behind my back. Thousands of dollars my dollars siphoned off over the years. Small amounts at first. Then bigger ones once I stopped checking it regularly. I thought the account had been closed years ago. Apparently not. The second attachment was worse. A text thread between Mom and Jake. Mom, just take what you need. She won't notice. Jake, lol, she's so dumb. She thinks we're broke. Mom, she owes us after everything we did for her. I sat there, marinara crusted on my fingers, staring at the screen like it was written in another language. Owes them. Owes them. I felt something inside me crack so cleanly it barely even hurt. Just a hollow pop like snapping a wishbone. They hadn't just used me, they planned to use me, they enjoyed it. And the worst part? I had spent so many nights wondering if I was the problem. If I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too selfish for finally walking away. No, I wasn't crazy, I wasn't wrong, I wasn't broken, I was prey. And I was done. I called Aunt Lisa. She picked up on the first ring, voice low and shaky. I couldn't watch anymore, she said. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. The rage buzzing in my ears was doing enough talking inside my head. You want to make them pay, Aunt Lisa said. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because my hands were already typing a search. Tenant rights lawyer near me. See, I still had my name on something else. Something way bigger than that old bank account. The house. The house they had thrown me out of. When Dad almost lost it to foreclosure years ago, I was the one who co-signed the refinance. My signature was still on the deed. My credit had saved them. And legally, I still owned half of their precious family home, half of the house Jake's girlfriend had moved into, half of the place they bragged about on Facebook and Instagram like it was their personal kingdom. I could have sold my share to an investor and walked away with a small fortune, but money wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel it. I wanted them to understand what it was like to have the ground ripped out from under you without warning, to watch everything you thought was yours vanish while everyone smiled and told you it was for your own good. So I made a plan, a slow, cold, perfect plan. First, I stopped by the county clerk's office, got an official copy of the deed, made sure my name was still there, bold, unmistakable, undeniable. Next, I met with a lawyer Aunt Lisa recommended. Shout out to Amanda W. Esquire, you're a freaking queen. We drafted a partition action, which basically meant either they bought out my half at fair market value or the court would force a sale. No negotiations, no mercy, just cold, clean math. Amanda grinned when she handed me the paperwork. You're doing this the right way, she said. No yelling, no threats, just facts. I nodded. Facts didn't scream, facts didn't sob, facts just ended things. While the paperwork churned through the court system, I focused on myself. I finished my night classes. I got my business degree. I started shadowing the GM more and more at the dealership. Jake, meanwhile, kept spiraling. His girlfriend dumped him. According to his sad little Facebook posts, she wasn't loyal enough to handle a real man. He wrecked the car. Insurance didn't cover it because he hadn't made the last 3 premium payments. Mom tried setting up a GoFundMe for hard times. It flopped spectacularly. The comments section was brutal. Maybe try getting a job instead of begging for handouts. I watched it all unfold with a coffee in hand and a smile I didn't bother hiding anymore. They had spent their whole lives treating me like a backup plan, a bank account, a second-class citizen. And now? Now I was holding the one thing they couldn't replace, the roof over their heads. And I wasn't done yet. The revenge wasn't just going to be losing the house. It was going to be watching me take it from them, one cold legal signature at a time. Court day was a Tuesday. Gray sky, drizzling rain, the kind of morning where everything feels damp and heavy. I wore a black blazer, black pants, black boots. I wasn't mourning, I was sharpening. Mom and Dad sat on the other side of the courtroom, looking like they'd swallowed a bag of lemons. Jake wasn't there. Too busy grinding at whatever MLM scam he was into that month, probably. They didn't look at me, not once. Amanda, my lawyer, handled most of it. She explained calmly to the judge that I was exercising my right as a co-owner to force the sale of the property. Mom tried to speak, tried to cry about how this is our family home. And we built memories there. The judge didn't care. Paperwork doesn't care about memories. Paperwork only cares about signatures. And mine was still there, in black ink. When the gavel came down, it was over. The house would be sold. The proceeds split. Or they could buy me out at a price they couldn't possibly afford. Mom gasped like someone had physically struck her. Dad put his head in his hands. For a second, just a second, I almost felt something stir in my chest. Pity? Regret? No. It was relief. This was justice. Slow, boring, devastating justice. I walked out without looking back. The house hit the market 3 weeks later. The listing photos showed the living room I'd once decorated for Christmas. The kitchen where I'd baked birthday cakes nobody ate. The staircase where Mom had screamed at me for always acting like a victim. Offers came in fast. Apparently, the real estate market didn't care about their sob stories either. Meanwhile, Jake was crashing at some buddy's couch. Mom and Dad were renting a sad little duplex way outside of town, pretending it was temporary and part of their minimalist journey on Facebook. Sure, Jan. But karma wasn't done yet. Because remember how I said I was moving up at the dealership? The GM finally announced his retirement, and guess who he picked as his successor? That's right, me. From lot attendant to general manager in 5 years. No handouts, no family safety nets, just grinding, saving, climbing, quietly, while they thought I was rotting somewhere. The dealership hosted a little party for the announcement. Nothing huge. Some balloons, a sheet cake, a few local business owners dropping by to say congrats. I was sipping a bad cup of coffee when I saw him. Jake, walking across the lot in a wrinkled button-down shirt and scuffed shoes, carrying a resume printed on what looked like his home printer with the ink running out. For a second, I genuinely thought he was there to buy a car. Nope. He was there to beg for a job. He didn't even recognize me at first. He just marched up, looked around, then asked one of the sales guys, "Hey, who's the manager?" The guy laughed. "You're looking at her." Jake's head snapped around so fast I'm surprised he didn't get whiplash. His face, chef's kiss. A combination of confusion, horror, and wounded pride. Like a dog that had bitten its owner and was suddenly confused about why it wasn't getting a treat. He stammered. I was wondering if you're hiring? Sales? Maybe? I'm really good with people." I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. "Funny," I said. "I remember when you said I needed to grow up and stop making everything about me." He flushed beet red. "I was just kidding," he mumbled. "Family fights, you know. Water under the bridge." I smiled. Not a kind smile. A shark smile. "I'm afraid we're looking for people with actual experience," I said crisply. "And reliability." The word reliability hit him like a slap. He tried again. "Come on, sis. Help me out." "For old time's sake?" "Old time's sake." Like the old time when he laughed while Mom threw my suitcase down the stairs. Like the old time when he called me dumb for not noticing they were stealing from me. I set my coffee cup down on the counter, leaned in slightly, and said, loud enough for the entire sales floor to hear, "I don't owe you anything." Dead silence. One of the new hires dropped a pen. Jake stood there, blinking rapidly, like maybe if he blinked hard enough he could undo what had just happened. But reality doesn't have a rewind button. I turned away, walked back into my office, closed the door, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. Later, one of the sales guys, a kid barely out of college, knocked on my door. Was that your brother?" I nodded. He whistled low. "That was brutal," he said, grinning. "Respect." I laughed. A real laugh, not the polite, hollow sound I used to fake for family dinners. I laughed because it wasn't brutal. It was bare minimum. It was setting a boundary that should have been set years ago. It was choosing myself. And it felt so damn good. The house sold a week later. I got my half of the check wired straight to my savings account. No fanfare, no drama, just freedom. Pure, glittering freedom. Mom sent a final text after that. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family." I stared at it for a long time. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I deleted the message, deleted her number, deleted all of them. Not out of anger, out of peace. I wasn't carrying their weight anymore. It was never mine to carry. It's been 2 years since I watched my brother walk out of the dealership with his head down. 2 years since I signed the closing papers on the house and walked away from everything that used to haunt me. 2 years since I stopped begging to be loved by people who only loved what they could take from me. I live somewhere new now. Small town, different state. No surprise visits, no pop-up guilt trips. Just me, a cat I adopted from the shelter, and more peace than I ever thought possible. My apartment has these huge windows. that catch the sunrise just right. Mornings here smell like coffee and fresh linen. Nights sound like crickets and the slow whir of a ceiling fan. There's a used bookstore down the street where the owner knows my name. There's a diner where the waitresses call me on and refill my coffee without asking. There's nobody watching me, judging me, weighing every breath against a ledger of imagined debts. It's not glamorous. It's not Instagram worthy. It's just mine. And God, that's enough. I hear about them sometimes. Small town gossip travels like wildfire if you know where to look. Jake tried to start a consulting business. It flopped in under 6 months. Mom and Dad moved again some trailer park on the outskirts of town where nobody knows them. And more importantly, nobody cares. There are whispers that Mom tells people I abandoned the family after everything they did for me. That I'm cold, ungrateful, selfish, good. Let them talk. Let them build whatever fairy tales they need to make sense of their downfall. Their stories don't have anything to do with me anymore. I stopped playing the villain in their tragedy. I stopped auditioning for their conditional love. I stopped kneeling at an altar that only existed to burn me. They tried to crawl back once. It was late fall, the year after the house sold. An email from Mom. Subject line, rebuilding bridges. I almost didn't open it, but something told me to look, not because I wanted to reconnect, because I wanted to see if they had changed. Spoiler alert, they hadn't. Family is family. We need to move past this. Jake's having a hard time. Maybe you could help him get back on his feet? You've always been the strong one. There it was. The same old song, the same old dance. Help Jake. Be the bigger person. Carry our mistakes. Nothing about the theft. Nothing about the eviction. Nothing about the years of being treated like an ATM with a pulse. Just another attempt to reel me back into the role I was born into but never chose. The fixer. I didn't respond. I didn't rage or rant or write a clever comeback. I just closed the laptop, made a cup of tea, and watched the sunset. Because that's what healing looks like sometimes. Not dramatic confrontations. Not screaming matches. Not viral Facebook posts. Just silence. A silence they could never fill again. Sometimes, late at night, I think about younger me. The girl standing on the front porch with wet socks and a suitcase full of borrowed clothes. The girl begging for scraps of love she should have been given freely. The girl who thought if she just worked harder, stayed quieter, loved more, maybe one day she'd be enough. I wish I could go back and hug her, tell her that the problem was never her, that no amount of sacrifice would ever change people who only know how to take. That freedom wouldn't come from earning their love. It would come from leaving, from choosing herself, from becoming someone who didn't need to be chosen by people who never deserved her in the first place. Last Christmas, I bought myself a present. A small gold key on a chain, nothing fancy. Not real gold, not expensive, just a little reminder. I wear it every day, a key to my own life, my own future, my own locked door that they can never pound on again. They said I was heartless. They said I was cruel. They said I destroyed the family. Maybe. But for the first time in my life, I put my heart first. And it was the best thing I ever did. Story 2. At her business party, my fiancé ridiculed my career. In front of everyone, I called it quits on the engagement. I am a 31-year-old man who works as a mechanic. I take pride in my work, even if it's not a glamorous one. Something was ignited in me as a child as I saw my dad fix vehicles in our garage. After completing trade school and earning my certification, I currently operate my own small business. It pays the bills and is an honest job. Above all else, I adore it. That's why I was so hurt by what my ex-fiancé did at her business party. In many aspects, my ex, who I'll name F, is quite different from me. Despite our differences, she is polished, works in corporate marketing, and has always been surrounded by individuals who place a high emphasis on looks. I believed we had something unique. She used to tell me how much she appreciated that I pursued my passion, and how much she admired my work ethic. That's what I believed she felt anyhow. A few weeks back, at the FS company holiday party, everything began. She was thrilled about the opportunity to meet her coworkers and get a glimpse of her life. I felt a little uneasy. I decided to go because I wanted to support her. Even though I'm not exactly at ease in formal settings and suits, the event was precisely what I had anticipated when we got there. Upscale, sleek, and populated by individuals who appeared to have been taken straight out of a fashion magazine. F fit in perfectly, joking and laughing with her coworkers. In contrast, I felt alienated, but I convinced myself it didn't matter. I wasn't there for them, I was there for her. About an hour into the celebration, things started to go wrong. One of her coworkers, a man who appeared to have been born in a boardroom, asked me what I did for a job as F was presenting me to the group. I just answered, "I own a small auto repair shop," and before the man could answer, F stepped in. "Isn't that adorable?" She laughed as she spoke. "He resembles a grease monkey from the present day." I froze as the group laughed. "A grease monkey?" I looked at her and repeated. She dismissed it with a wave. "Come on, please. It's only a joke. Stop being too serious." The group swiftly moved on, but the remark stuck with me. The words weren't the only thing. The tone was the problem, the manner in which she spoke. As if my work were a foolish pastime rather than a respectable profession. It hurt deep down, but I dismissed it, telling myself I was overanalyzing it. During a toast later that night, the last blow was delivered. With a glass in hand, F took the stage and began expressing gratitude to her staff for their diligent efforts. Then, without warning, she turned the conversation to me and gave my fiancé particular recognition. Grinning, she said, "He's quite good with his hands, but he's not exactly a corporate man. You know who to contact in case someone's vehicle goes down." Laughter broke out throughout the room. Dozens of eyes turned on me, and I felt my cheeks heat up. There was a hint of contempt in their smiles. As the laughing subsided and I sat there feeling ashamed, F was grinning and obviously delighted with herself. I looked directly into F's eyes and asked her in a quiet voice why she didn't seem to realize how uncomfortable I was. She didn't care, or worse. She was obviously proud of her small joke, but she was too busy enjoying the attention. To get my thoughts straight, I excused myself from the meal and went outdoors. I was glad of the cold night air, but my mind was anything but peaceful. I kept repeating what she had said, the laughter reverberating in my head. This was hardly an isolated remark. There was a pattern. She had turned my passion and job into a joke. What's the worst? In front of people who hardly knew me, she had done it. F stepped out a few minutes later, her wine glass still in her hand. "You're there." Her tone was light as she said, "Why did you flee?" I turned to her and tried to speak steadily. "How humiliating was that, do you know?" She blinked, obviously surprised. "What are you discussing?" "The toast." My annoyance boiled to the surface as I spoke. "You kept around for convenience, and you gave me the impression that I was some sort of handyman." She chuckled as if it didn't matter. "Oh, hurry up. It was only a joke. It was adored by everybody." I said firmly I didn't. "Additionally, you've done this before. You've said something similar to this previously, but you went too far tonight." A guarded look took the place of her grin. "You're going overboard. I was only making fun of myself to lighten the atmosphere." I fired back. "Despite your behaviors, it seems that you don't appreciate what I do. Are you even aware of how patronizing you came across?" She folded her arms. "You're exaggerating. Perhaps you are the issue if you can't take a little teasing." That was it. The mask had come off. This was more than a simple miscommunication. There was a fundamental divergence between my self-perception and hers. She couldn't, or wouldn't, support my profession the way I had always attempted to. Knowing what I was about to say next, I inhaled deeply. "F, I am no longer able to do this." Her gaze expanded. "What are you discussing?" "This connection." My voice was steady as I spoke. "It's finished." She gave a tense laugh. "A joke cannot be taken seriously. Is one comment really going to lead you to discard everything?" I answered. "It's not just one comment. It's your perception of me. The way you have always seen me. What I do is not respected by you. Furthermore, I cannot live my entire life with someone who despises me." Her look changed from incredulous to irate as she gazed at me. "You're being absurd," she yelled. "You believe that your ability to fix vehicles makes you unique? It's not that impressive." Newsflash. Although her remarks were painful, they also made me more certain of my choice. I placed the engagement ring in her hand after removing it. "I wish you success in locating someone you truly admire." I stated that before making my way back inside the gathering. The burden on my chest started to lessen. I didn't worry that calling off the engagement in front of everyone would cause a stir. Especially from someone who professed to love me, I deserved better than to be treated like a joke. I went back to the table, Calmly, the first picked up my coat and got ready to go. Behind me, S rushed in, obviously agitated. "Hold on. Are you truly going to turn this into a show?" Trying to speak quietly, she hissed. "That was all your own doing," I answered, maintaining a composed tone. "Enjoy the remainder of your gathering." The tension was beginning to be felt by others around us. I could see murmured talks and interested looks. I didn't stop, though. F took one last hold of my arm. Now her voice was urgent. "Let's talk about this, please. Everything is being exaggerated by you." I faced her and looked her in the eyes. "I offered you opportunities to show me respect. F, I always encouraged you, congratulated you on your accomplishments, and never minimized your efforts. However, you were unable to do the same for me. I can't talk myself out of this. You are who you are." I left her standing there with the engagement ring still in her hand as I left the party. It was a calm journey home. I felt a mixture of relief and lingering annoyance. I mentally relived the night's events, wondering if I had made the proper choice. But every time I considered her remarks and the contemptuous manner she discussed my job, I felt I had acted in my own best interests. The repercussions started over the following few days. Friends of both parties began texting and calling to inquire about the situation. It seems that F had not spent any time in fabricating her account of events. In a group conversation, she commented, "He's so insecure. He was unable to take it when I made a joke. Who makes a toast to terminate an engagement?" I decided not to participate. The truth was known by those who mattered, and I wasn't going to be like her. However, I recognized she wouldn't stop when one of my friends emailed me images of her ranting on social media. She claimed to have escaped a gunshot, painting me as too sensitive and domineering. I made the decision to take charge of the story at that point. I made contact with those who attended the gathering, co-workers, friends, and even acquaintances. I gently gave my version of events. I explained to them how disrespectful they were all the time and how the party was the last straw. The majority of them were sympathetic. Some even expressed regret for their laughter during the toast. I received a private message from one of her co-workers saying, "I never liked how she talked about you. She gave the impression that she was accepting less." It was painful, but it confirmed what I had decided. I wasn't going to allow her continue to shape the story, because she had never really appreciated me or my work. Our social circles were affected by my choice to call it quits on the engagement, but I didn't back down. F persisted in trying to portray me as the bad guy. Her actions during the party and the gossip she heard from others about her behind closed doors, however, started to catch up with her. When a mutual friend who had been undecided messaged me, it was a really fulfilling moment. They wrote, "I spoke with someone at her office. They said that she boasts about how she chose you because she believed you would be simple to manage. You seem to have escaped a bullet." Well, dodged a bullet. When her employer called me, it was the final piece of closure. Apparently, management had heard the rumors about the party and was worried about her professionalism. I didn't need to speak, just verified the details of the toast and her actions afterward. After thanking me, the boss indicated they will take care of it internally. I've heard rumors that F was passed over for a promotion she had been pursuing, but I'm not sure what occurred next. After all, actions have repercussions. F, out of my life, please. I poured myself into my career and my passions. I updated some of my tools, took on increasingly difficult work in the shop, and even started instructing aspiring mechanics in a weekend session. Focusing on something that made me happy without criticism or condescension was excellent. I sold the engagement ring and utilized the proceeds to take a much-needed trip. It was how I ended that chapter and started a new one. In retrospect, I saw that the toast wasn't the only reason for the separation. It has to do with what the toast showed. I was not considered an equal by F. She viewed me as someone she could dominate, make fun of, and use for her own pride. It's not love either. Respect, cooperation, and uplifting one another rather than tearing one another down for a cheap chuckle are the hallmarks of love. Therefore, use this as a warning if you ever feel devalued or belittled in a relationship. You're worthy of better. Even if it's difficult, leave. Click the subscribe button if you like the story about defending yourself. Perhaps the following story will encourage you to follow suit. Remain Story 3. My spouse took home a $9 million prize, booted me out, and filed for divorce. However, she was unaware of the prenuptial agreement her parents made me sign before to our marriage. Of the 35 of us, I have a modest upbringing. I grew up in a modest 3-bedroom home that always smelled of freshly laundered clothes and home-cooked meals, and my parents reside in a peaceful suburb. I worked at a number of odd jobs after high school, including bartending, assisting at my uncle's hardware business, and finally running a neighborhood sports goods store. It was honest, but it wasn't glitzy. In contrast, my wife was from a different world than mine. Her parents drove expensive automobiles, had several residences, and occasionally threw lavish parties. Let's name them Maya, my mother-in-law, and Phil, my father-in-law. Maya. Phil had a subtle authority in any space and was a towering, imposing figure both physically and socially. His casual comments were more like subliminal threats or deceptive statements. Maya Mill was as adept at subtly expressing disdain. People might shrink at the sight of a single raised eyebrow alone. Although they were never explicitly nasty to me, I could sense their disdain behind their kind remarks. I became aware of my wife's parents' intense concern of strangers stealing their family's possessions after we were engaged. Even though my wife and I had been dating for years before we could decide on a wedding date, they treated me like an outsider. Phil insisted that I sign a prenuptial agreement, Maya. I was too overcome by love and lacked the resources to challenge it legally. I insisted that it was only a little gesture to please her parents. I thought that the only assurance I needed was love. I can still clearly remember the day I signed. At her parents' enormous house, it was a warm afternoon. It was almost like a typical business transaction when Maya lay out the document, pushed a pen in my direction, and offered me coffee. My wife said little as she stood to the side. Even though it ached, I dismissed it since I thought it wouldn't matter in the long run. In essence, the agreement said that any inheritances, gifts, or trust monies that belonged to her family would continue to be her own property. However, any significant item that we obtained together, like as a home or lottery wins, would be considered marital property. That seemed strange to me, but all I wanted was to wed her. We were married in a beautiful ceremony by a lake 6 months later. The opulence overwhelmed my parents, yet they were encouraging. When my father welcomed my in-laws, I remember the strain on his face. I believed that love would dispel all uncertainties, but he had always advised me to follow my instincts. There were no significant incidents throughout the first several years. Our residence is a condominium. Our security was aided by her parents. Although her father's gift had provided the down payment, I made monthly mortgage payments. In retrospect, it was never really a gift, more like a means of dominating us. However, at the time, I thought this was the norm for rich households. Money disputes and occasional outbursts over her parents interfering with our decisions were commonplace in our marriage. They would unexpectedly arrive, bring new furnishings or decor, and sometimes abruptly rearrange our entire living area. My wife would dismiss my annoyance as the helpfulness of her parents. Then the day arrived that completely upended everything. Excited, my wife contacted me to tell me that she had won a $9 million lottery prize from a random ticket she had purchased at a service station. I was thrilled at first, wishing to explore the world and abandon our jobs. But the happiness soon faded. Even from my parents, she demanded that we keep it a secret. She started talking about properly claiming the money and meeting with lawyers I had never met, which made her strangely paranoid. It hurt when she told me that I would feel uncomfortable attending these meetings. I was unaware that the true bombshell was still to come. She and her aunt were searching through drawers when I arrived home from work one day, fatigued. She broke the news in a casual manner. She was going to file for divorce. She instructed me to leave the condo and pack my things. She said it was an agreement in her name. I was blown away. Yes, I paid monthly mortgage payments, but it seems she felt her newfound wealth and her father's original down payment rendered me inconsequential. I sensed the beauty of my heart. With a trembling voice, I phoned my father and informed him that I was recently evicted from my own house. It was the height of treachery. Then came the biggest shock. I found out that my father-in-law had dispatched his own lawyer to protect her. In order to separate the lottery money from me, they wanted me out. However, they have forgotten the conditions of the very prenuptial agreement they imposed on me. It is stated that any windfall received during marriage was considered a shared asset rather than completely protecting their daughter. I suddenly understood that they might not be able to keep it all if they insisted on divorce me immediately following that windfall. I made the decision to proceed cautiously. My father advised me to maintain my composure, get a lawyer who is not in their social circle, and prepare for a heated argument. And I wasn't going to fold. They are treating me like a disposable annoyance and have flung me down the gauntlet. They had seriously overestimated me if they believed I would go peacefully. I tried to process the shock by staying at my parents' house for a few nights. My mother was furious, accusing my in-laws of being rude from the beginning. Even though he was just as furious, my father remained realistic. First thing in the morning, he made an appointment for me with a family law lawyer, an old friend. I felt a wave of relief and rage as I sat in that lawyer's office. I informed them about my wife's recent $9 million win and how the in-laws pushed for a prenuptial agreement before surprising me with a divorce. He genuinely laughed when he read the prenuptial agreement. He said that they had shot themselves in the foot. Specifically, they contained wording that, absent a judge's irrational legal interpretation, bundles lottery wins under marital assets. You have a right to a sizable share. It felt like a lifeline to hear this. I've been afraid that the prenup would prevent me from moving on. However, it turned out that the prospect of a lottery situation had been overwhelmed by their dread of me asserting inherited money. My attorney cautioned that it would not be simple. My in-laws had a lot of money, were highly connected, and probably had a whole legal team on hand. However, he thought we had a good case, particularly given I had been abruptly kicked out of our jointly inhabited house and had made financial contributions to the marriage. I inquired about our state's divorce procedure. Months or more might easily pass during a contentious divorce. However, my wife's side may look for a quick settlement if they understood they were in a precarious situation. The attorney foresaw that they would attempt coercion or deceitful means to get me to give away my rights at a low cost. Within days, I received a threatening voicemail from my father-in-law urging me to stop because I deserved nothing from his daughter. He said he would make sure I had nothing if I attempted to collect the lottery money. I was recently told to document everything by my lawyer. Then, outside my parents' house, my mother-in-law cornered me and offered me a small sum if I would disappear without a trace. Although it was so cheap that it wouldn't even cover half of my mortgage contributions, she pitched it as a fantastic bargain. I declined, stating that we would meet in court. She laughed. Perplexed by my refusal, obviously not used to having her money refused, my lawyer filed papers to prevent the lottery monies from being moved or concealed when discussions came to a deadlock. My in-laws were furious about it and began making up stories about me being a gold digger who took advantage of their naive daughter. It's stupid, but I didn't back down. My father-in-law tried to interfere with my job, but my employer, who ran the sports goods store, had my back. Friends took sides. Some praised me for retaliating, while others called me petty. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, I resisted giving in. We were given a court date following a few weeks of unsuccessful negotiations. I personally couldn't find my wife. She ignored any direct engagement with me, essentially being shielded by her parents. Claiming that I was the leech who had done nothing to help the marriage, she let her attorneys speak for her. Financial documents, bill time-sharing, and the specific prenuptial agreement regarding windfalls were the things my lawyer pushed back on. We also brought up the fact that I had been forcibly removed from the property. The court gave both parties instructions to get ready for a more official asset division hearing. My supervisor urged my father-in-law to get lost after he threatened him once again in a final attempt at intimidation. That simply made my father-in-law more irate. Although he was certain that a court would see through their intimidation tactics, my lawyer advised us to move cautiously. There was nothing that could have prepared me for the last court battle, but at least I knew that, oddly, the law was on my side because of the very prenuptial agreement they imposed on me. As the weeks went by, the anxiety about the impending hearing intensified. My wife continued to stay away from me directly. However, her attorneys barraged me with motions. Because she bought the ticket, they maintained that the lottery prize was independent property, disregarding the prenuptial agreement that said any significant inheritance received during a marriage was marital. My father-in-law, meantime, attempted to damage my reputation with friends and business associates, by spreading the myth that I was a gold digger who had married into the family just to get money. I experienced a whirlwind of motivation and anger at this time. They were wrong if they thought they could intimidate me into giving up my rights. I had records of my contributions to our joint life, including energy bills, food, and partly mortgage payments. I went over every element of the prenuptial agreement with my lawyer. He drew attention to a crucial passage that lists all financial windfalls, including but not restricted to winners from lotteries and game shows. Unless otherwise specified, marital assets will be taken into consideration. My in-laws appeared to have forgotten to close the rear door. We held an initial status meeting 1 week prior to the hearing. My wife came with her parents, a financial advisor, and a posse of lawyers for attorneys. They gave me the same arrogant look, but when my lawyer coolly pulled out the prenuptial agreement and pointed out the precise part about lottery winnings, their faces faltered. After listening in silence and appearing unimpressed by their attempts to have it dismissed, the judge ordered that all significant assets be kept frozen until the main hearing. My mother-in-law confronted me outside the courthouse that same afternoon and insisted that we have adult conversations. She attempted to provide a flat payment that was much less than what she had previously offered, calling it generous for someone from my background. I declined once more, informing her that the court would make the final decision. As if I were the one who unexpectedly divorced her daughter, she yelled that I was ruining the family. Even though the hypocrisy infuriated me, I maintained my composure. I had been cautioned by my attorney not to get into heated arguments that might be used against me in the future. I was concerned that my in-laws might attempt to hide the lottery winnings in hidden accounts behind the scenes. Anticipating that scenario, my attorney asked the court to issue injunction prohibiting any significant transactions. Additionally, we made plans to have a forensic accountant on hand in case we thought they were embezzling money. My father-in-law became enraged. In his voicemail, he called me disgusting and said that I had drained his daughter's life of love. Given that they were the ones who tossed me out as soon as I won the lottery, it was wealthy. I worked with my lawyer to carefully prepare as the hearing drew near. To make sure I would come across as composed and truthful in court, we practiced my statement. I had receipts for the mortgage I had helped pay for, copies of the prenuptial agreement, and even a text message from my wife acknowledging our joint expenses. The attorney advised me to be succinct in my responses. Let the facts do the talking. We would respond with unambiguous documentation if it attempted emotional theater. My heart was racing as I stood in front of the courthouse on the morning of the hearing. I went with my parents for moral support. I saw my wife sitting next to her father, both of them with icy expressions. But they waited outside the courtroom once the proceedings started. With her arms folded, her mother hovered at the rear. With their immaculate suits, my father-in-law's attorneys exuded confidence, possibly thinking that resources and legal prowess could overcome the evidence. A severe woman in her 50s, the judge wasted no time. She asked both sides to make their case. The lead lawyer for my wife attempted to paint me as a small contributor who did little more than share a residence. They contended that she used her own funds to make the lottery purchase. However, my attorney calmly brought up how the prenuptial agreement specifically included these windfalls as marital property. Additionally, our bank records demonstrated that she had used our joint account card on that particular day. There was a noticeable tremor in my father-in-law's camp when we presented that proof. The court inquired as to whether they had any supporting records that demonstrated the money was her own. They stuttered, saying it was her father's contribution into the account or that the card had been used by mistake. However, the remarks unmistakably identified our names in addition to hers. The judge listened, her eyes moving hopefully to them. My wife finally said anything. She says her parents pushed for a divorce and that she never intended to upset me. She stuttered over her words when the prize arrived to safeguard family assets. She acknowledged feeling under pressure, but she also attempted to defend it by saying that everyone would hunt us down if they found out about the money. My attorney inquired as to whether she sought my advice prior to making these choices. No, she said. One could feel the judge's disdain. By lunchtime, it became evident that the prenuptial agreement had both advantages and disadvantages for them. The same instrument that had been used to segregate their money now threatened to give me a sizable portion of their lottery winnings. The court ordered a second hearing for final determinations, noting she was inclined to see the lottery as a substantial marital asset, subject to equitable distribution outside. My father-in-law muttered as he passed me, "This is not at all finished." But there was no denying that his confidence was broken. In the weeks preceding the ultimate decision, they became more desperate. The attorneys for my father-in-law made every effort, submitting petitions to rewrite the prenuptial agreement, arguing that the intention was not to incorporate lottery winnings. Making reference to the clear wording, the judge rejected these requests. My mother-in-law attempted to corner me once again, telling me that I would regret breaking their family. I bluntly informed her that they had initiated everything by evicting me and deceiving me with a divorce. My wife attempted to contact me, leaving a heartfelt message, stating that she didn't want our relationship to end so badly, and that we could still save it if we could only make a private agreement. If they had been fair to me from the beginning, I would have given it some thought. However, my faith was lost following the threats, falsehoods, and forced eviction. I was told not to participate in these back-channel discussions by my attorney. Our legal position was solid. There's no need to accept crumbs. The courtroom was crowded with lawyers from both sides on the day of the last hearing. My mom, dad, and a couple of friends came to help me. After reviewing the amended files and allowing final remarks, the judge entered the bench and sat silently in the back. The main attorney for my father-in-law made one more attempt to characterize me as a crafty opportunist who only found out about the prenuptial agreement after taking advantage of the family's generosity. My attorney responded with a fact-based argument. They also had me sign a prenuptial agreement. It specifically mentioned three: a shared property and a lottery or other windfall. I made monthly contributions to a condo that my father-in-law partially funded. Therefore, it was also not a completely distinct asset. Furthermore, their quick divorce application immediately following the prize was classic proof of their scheme to keep me from the money. After carefully listening, the judge rendered her decision. She stated that the lotto winnings were unmistakably marital property, nonetheless the prenuptial agreement. She chastised my in-laws for attempting to distort the contract that they had written themselves. She also determined that I should be compensated for my share of the mortgage and other marital payments, and that my wife's decision to kick me out of the apartment right away was irrational. I won, to put it briefly. The judge issued a directive. I get paid for my portion of the property as well as a sizable portion of any lottery winnings. In order to handle papers, we parted ways with the finalization date, set for a few weeks later. There was thunder in my father-in-law's face. My mother-in-law whispered angrily to him, looking indignant. With tears in her eyes, my wife stood there, even out of sincere remorse or even rage about losing a lot of money. I had a wave of melancholy and validation. We were once in love, but everything was destroyed by their attempts to take advantage of me, parental influence, and avarice. Their attorneys attempted to offer a slightly altered settlement in the aftermath, perhaps in the hopes that I would agree to a lower amount in order to prevent more controversy. We had no reason to lower the judge's decision, so my attorney suggested that we accept it as is. I merely gave up full stake in the condo as a compromise. I had no desire to return to that location. They sent me a check for a very large amount. Did it receive half the prize? Not quite, but it was large enough to allow me to comfortably reconstruct my life at that time. I came to see my in-laws' conceit that affluence shielded them from repercussions. They weren't prepared for my powerful retaliation. Ironically, the very document that guaranteed my portion of the profits was the prenuptial agreement they insisted on. To the best of my knowledge, my wife, if she ever existed, is still being raised by her parents. Because of the ensuing disaster, she has lost face in her social group. She is dealing with guilt, according to some common acquaintances, but I doubt she would ever publicly acknowledge her family's involvement in this. As a thank you for supporting me, I upgraded my parents' house using a portion of the settlement. I also invested a chunk. Even so, I was scarred by the entire experience. My perspective on marriage, trust, and money has changed, and I find solace in the fact that I held my ground. I resisted being coerced into taking food leftovers. It was painful, but it was an excuse. The end result seemed like a victory over oppression. No longer under the influence of my in-laws. I'm going forward. Ironically, I've gone back to living a simpler life, much as I did before getting married. But if they remember anything about me, they will see that I'm stronger, smarter, and not the gullible fool they thought they could steamroll. Let's say they unintentionally provided me with the legal tool to save me from going bankrupt. The conflict was initiated by them. I completed it, and this concludes the chapter.